Saram everyone and welcome to the Sri Sathya Sai Media Center and to this special conversation with Mr. Rajan Sood, whom Swami used to very fondly call as his student, even though technically he does not have a degree from Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, but Swami decided to give a degree to him in his own way. He is an eminent architect based in New Delhi. Many of us probably are aware of Bhagawan's two super speciality hospitals now run by the Sri Sathya Sai Central Trust. We know that both these institutions offer absolutely free medical care to anyone who comes into the portals of this institution seeking help. We know that Bhagawan has blessed these institutions with his divine presence. He has equipped these institutions with the best of facilities, and they are comparable to the best in India, and they continue to be role models for everyone in the world who want to serve the poorest of the poor. They have inspired so many people, individuals and organizations to emulate this and in their own way try to be there for the needy and do their own bit to make the world a place where we would want to be. But not many of us know about how these hospitals came into being. If we focus on the super speciality hospital in Whitefield, Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Medical Sciences, not many know what went into the construction of the hospital. This hospital actually, if you see, looks so different than all the other institutions of Bhagawan. Generally, all the institutions in Parthi have the hues of pink, blue and yellow, but this one is very different and it is majestic, it's imposing. What were those divine instructions that came from Bhagawan when the engineers were at their work? And what are those small and big miracles that happened along the way? The hospital came into being in less than a year, and we know that when you work with Bhagawan, every day there is some miracle or the other happening. Sometimes you are able to put your finger on it, sometimes you don't even realize, but it is as if you are just being carried. You are going in a divine flow. So there are a lot of fantastic stories that happen behind the scenes, and today we are here by Bhagawan's grace to discover and delight in that beautiful story of Bhagawan's healthcare mission. Mr. Rajan Sood was blessed by Bhagawan, was personally picked by Swami to have this opportunity to be associated with this hospital right before its inception, right from the construction stages. So sir, please take us back down the memory lane. I think it was in 1999. Can you please unearth those beautiful tales for us about how Swami got you involved? Did you know it was coming? Was it a bolt from the blue, or rather a bolt from the orange, if I can say? How did it happen? And what are your memories, reflections as you think about it? So let's go to that moment when Swami made you part of this spectacular saga, that is the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Medical Sciences, Whitefield, Bangalore.
Sairam, it actually was a bolt. Okay. It really hit strong and quite unbelievable because as Swami was talking to me about it, I had no clue what he was saying. Mm-hmm. I'd come to him with another project, for an approval of another project, that is a school at Rishikesh,
Swami School in Rishikesh.
Swami School at Rishikesh. It was a boys' school to be built. And I had brought the drawings for that.
Okay.
And my wife and I were sitting at his feet, and he looked through those drawings and he put them aside. And he started talking about a project, which to me was just information coming from him. You know, because in one's wildest dreams, one could not imagine oneself to be capable enough to do something of this magnitude. So, but once he put the drawings aside and he started talking about a hospital to be built, he said, I belong to Delhi, and the mode of communication, the language of communication between Swami and me has been largely Hindi or English or mixed. So, I'll repeat a few words which may be in Hindi.
Please.
We'll translate. And so he says, देखो, मैं परती में इतना बड़ा hospital बनाया. Parti is a village. So it caters to the requirements of this area and the surrounds. Now we are going to build a hospital in Bangalore. So considering that Bangalore is a big city, I want this hospital to be very grand. I said, yes, Swami, it must be grand. He says, I want him to look like the Buckingham Palace.
I want it to look like the Buckingham Palace.
Buckingham Palace.
Wow.
So I said, yes, Swami, it should.
Please.
And with that, since I was sitting at his feet, he just nudged me with his toe and he said, start. I looked at him in disbelief. It didn't really register. It didn't register what he was saying. And I'm sure that disbelief showed on my face. So he said, you can do it.
Oh.
All right. Because, largely now that we've been practicing for quite some time in the field of architecture, this has never been our forte.
Okay.
We've been into other fields of architecture which were totally unrelated. However, we had been doing little works for hospitals like renovation somewhere or facelift somewhere, but not a hospital of the magnitude and the majesty that Swami was talking about. So, having told me that and having said start, the conversation kind of ended and we came out.
So this was in 99?
This was, yes, early 99. And I just returned to Delhi and all the entire office got down to work. But what we were working at, we were unsure because we had no requirements. We had no details except a dimension site plan.
So everything you planned?
Yes, that was very strange because I had no clue on how to
no
plan.
information to start working on?
No, except his word, start.
Wow.
Okay. So he said, we all I did was I had some doctor friends in Delhi. Okay. I went, the cardiologist, and Swami's devotees at that. So I just bounced off the ideas and got some feedback on how a hospital should be. They invited me to their hospitals. They showed me the operation theaters and the ICUs and everything. So I got a little feel, to understand what the basic requirements of a hospital could be, not should be, could be. Because everything I was assuming. And so with that information, that limited information, we prepared a design. And there was another gentleman, a very well-known landscape architect, Mr. Satish Khanna, who helped us with the site plans and he helped us with development of the basic concept. And so armed with the set of few drawings, just a handful of drawings, I came to Parthi. And it was not very easy trying to catch Swami's attention from Sai Kulwant Hall.
You were in the normal darshan line.
Yes, I was in the normal darshan line.
So you have to wait for tokens and...
Yes, yes.
You have to come 2-3 hours before, sit in the queue.
Yes, absolutely. But some sense had prevailed into me. So that this time the drawings weren't very large. So I got them in a small box. And we hadn't done very large drawings because of the inconvenience of sitting in the darshan line with those big things. So... it was kind of difficult to reach out to Swami. So I happened to know somebody who had been serving Swami in the auditorium, Purnachandra. Swami was in Purnachandra at that time. So I just happened to tell him, I said, I don't know what to do. Swami is not looking at me and I have these drawings which I want to show him. And fair enough, next morning a message came to me. Tell Rajan to come to Purnachandra with his box, the black box. Oh. Because the box was black, a small box. So I walked in and Swami was there, seated on his sofa. So I went and sat at his feet. And he very graciously looked at all the drawings, not that there were many, but he looked at all the drawings and he put them on the sofa beside him and he told me, come. So I got up and from his sitting area there was a door that led to the backstage of Purnachandra, which is a huge space at the back. So we walked in and much to my shock and surprise and horror, the whole area was packed with models of the hospital. Oh. I can't even tell you the names of the architects who very famous architects who had developed the designs.
All 3D models?
In 3D models and huge number of drawings ready for, almost ready for construction. The whole area was littered with these.
Wow.
And I was a little embarrassed as to why would Swami do this to me, A little thing like me, he would say, prepare drawings and do the hospital.
When he has the best of people who have already done that.
Internationally the finest that one could think of, who were willing to put in so much of effort to develop even models of the hospital and send them. And so I told him, I said, Swami, so many architects? And he turned around and he says, but I chose you.
Wow.
And those words were, okay. So it took me a while to absorb. And then he brought me back into his sitting area. And the whole experience was overwhelming. Firstly, seeing so many things already done. And then his words that I chose you. And so we sat down, and as I was wrapping up everything, he said, "Abhi jao, Delhi jao, main batata hu." So with that,
you go now. I'll let you know.
Yes, I will inform you. So I went back to Delhi, and I kept waiting, and there was no information coming. So we had no choice but to just sit around.
So you continued to work on those drawings?
No, we did not. We did not work on those drawings because Swami had not given me an approval on those drawings. Okay. He had definitely seen them. He'd appreciated what we had done, but he did not say that...
He told you, I'm choosing you,
yes.
But you didn't know what to do.
No, nothing. I was as confused perhaps as you sound now. So, till after a few days of probably a month or so after having reached Delhi, I get a call from one of the trust members saying that the planning of the hospital had been done in Bangalore, and he would want me to superimpose the facade and give it a look, the hospital. But I wish he had mentioned that Swami had asked him to talk to me. He didn't say that.
Okay.
So I refused.
Oh, okay.
I refused, saying that no, I will not do this. Because Swami's instructions were, you start. So I wasn't sure if this was the correct starting point. But then a day or so later, I realized that any work, any kind of work that is associated with Swami, one should do. And I had no business to say no. So, we all have mobile phones. So I had the trust member's name and the number. And I called him back and I told him that I'd be willing to do it. So he sent me all the drawings. And on the drawings, the plans that is, we tried to fit in our idea of what the hospital should look like.
Okay.
And thereby modifying a few areas that we felt would add to the overall look of the hospital. So we were ready in about a week or two, and I called him and I told him that we were ready. So, and with those drawings, I came to Bangalore. And he saw the drawing, seemed pleased, and he told me to come to Puttaparthi and show the drawings to Swami. And now that was a tough thing to do again, much as I looked forward to it. But going through the whole process of sitting in the Saikulvanth hall and waiting, and whether Swami would talk to me, not talk to me.
Access was so difficult.
Access was not difficult. Access happened only when he wanted. For us, it was difficult.
I know.
So if he so wanted, he would talk.
Yes.
Which he
And
had
having all these drawings and waiting in the darshan lines.
Yes.
Is difficult.
So he said, "Don't worry, I'm writing a letter to Swami. Just send it, give it to the office, and the rest will be taken care of." And fair enough. As soon as I reached Parthi, I handed over the letter to the office. And the next morning, I got a message that please come to Purnachandra with your drawings. So I was this time a little more confident, and I walked in, and Swami was there. He sat on his sofa. And, considering that it's a very huge project, so drawings also were pretty long and big drawings. And he saw the elevation and he was very pleased with it. And, however, the main comments which came from him were that there were little gopurams that we had put along the parapet in a few areas. So he says, this is a very beautiful element. Isko sab jagah lagao.
Oh, wow.
So I said, yes, Swami.
So have gopurams.
Yes, there are
More
little
gopurams.
small gopurams, which we'd introduced as little features on the parapet. And he says, "Ye sara parapet ke upar lagao." Firstly, the use of parapet is not a commonplace word. It's a technical language which is more common amongst architects. So that really got me in parapet. Okay, so then he said, he looked at the rest and he said, this hospital is going to be inaugurated on my 75th birthday. So I want the dome to be 75 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
So I said, yes, Swami. And with those few comments, Swami gave me, and he gave leave for me to move out. And I came back, I rushed to Bangalore, and we used to have little shops in Bangalore where AutoCAD facilities were available. And so I walked into one such shop and I modified the elevations, put the gopurams, raised the height of the dome. And by the evening, everything was done. And next morning, I was in Parthi with the drawings. And this time, Swami picked me up. And again, it was in the Purnachandra, in his residence, that he called me. And he saw the drawing, and there was a big smile on his face. And he said, "Ha, abhi barabar hai." And then
Now
he
it is
says,
nice.
now it is correct. And he said, "Ye dome uncha nahi kiya." I said, "Swami, kya?" You see what happens when we draw in presentation drawings, we tend to make things which are closer to you a little heavier, a little thicker. And as they move backwards, they become in thinner lines. So the dome being the farthest was in the thinnest line. So I told him, I said, "Swami, that there it is." He says, yeah, bilkul barabar hai.
Okay.
Ye banao.
It's perfect. Go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. So, the drawing that Swami had approved is exactly what the hospital looks like today.
Wow. Beautiful.
Right? And I realized...
Not many of us know that the dome of the hospital is 75 feet.
75 feet from the roof of the second floor.
Yes.
Okay, it's not from the road level.
Yes.
It is the hospital building height plus 75 feet. Yeah, so that's really tall.
And the hospital construction started in 2000, in the year of Swami's 75th birthday, and this was to mark that year.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Wow. So with that, I came back to Delhi and we started making detailed drawings. And there were a whole lot of detailed drawings to be done for the execution of the project. So in about, I think, 15 days or so, I get a call from the same trust member saying that, "I have a feeling Swami is going to ask for you. Are you ready?" I said, "No, I'm not ready. It's going to take a long time." He says, no, you need to rush. So I said, "No, please tell Swami to hold." I mean, that's how we all think about it, right? In our own time frame. So the whole office was working, and 2 days later, I get a call. "Swami's asked me to call you. So please come tomorrow." And much as I was hassled, and to my surprise, by the time we closed office, all drawings were complete.
Oh.
All prints were ready, which I don't know how it happened because we were way behind schedule. But Swami's grace, we finished everything. I had that packet with me.
You're wondering probably, did I really finish everything?
Yes, there was a lot of doubt, but somehow it got finished. And I took the next morning flight, went to Vrindavan. And when I reached there, I was made to sit amongst a group of people, which was in front. And I didn't know who was sitting around me. In a little while, Swami came out for darshan and he came towards where I was sitting and he asked me, "When did you come?" I said, "Swami, this morning." So he said, "Drawings laya?" I said, "Ha, Swami." He says, "Ha, abhi?" Then he pointed out to all the people. So the people who were around me there was the chairman of L&T and there were some of his engineers sitting there. So he told me that I should go with all of them and sit in the guest house and explain to them the entire scheme.
L&T was the construction company.
And explain everything to them in detail. And then soon as he would finish his interviews, he'd call for us. So we had about 45 minutes or so, and I ran them through the entire scheme. And when they saw the drawings, the chairman's comment was, "In 1 year?" It was very, very elaborate. It was very elaborate, as we can all see it.
Yeah.
And the Swami's idea of grand was actually very grand. And as soon as the interviews were over, he called us, and this time he was sitting in his living room, which is on the other side of Trey. And we were all waiting. He came and sat in his chair and he said, "Love." So I showed him, and he had patience to go through every drawing that was made. And there was a huge number of drawings. And he ran through everything. Ha, acha hai, barabar hai. And then suddenly there was a drawing which was the detail of a crest that was to be made above some of the windows. And if we all remember the Prasanthi, which was there before what we see now, it was a grey building and it had two very beautiful birds on the sides with kind of snakes in their beaks. And having seen that, I always felt that maybe birds could be a part of the scheme. So we had, in that crest, we had made two birds, one on either side. And I think only I knew that they were parrots. And on that drawing, it was not possible to make out. One could see that they were birds, but what those birds were was not easy to make out. So he looked at the drawing and straight away says, "No parrots."
Oh.
So I was a little surprised that he could make out that they were parrots. I mean, our limitations.
Yeah.
And I said, "All right, Swami." So after that was the instruction that was given to me at that time. And so he saw everything and he says,
So you replaced that element with something else?
yes, we put in flowers. I don't think we have any birds anymore in that. So we replaced with some kind of floral pattern. And thereafter, we had a couple of meetings with the contractors, that's Larsen and Toubro. And I came back to Delhi because although we had done the drawings, but then there are a lot of details that are required because drawings are our language by which we communicate, you know, to the contractor and to the builder as to what is to be made and how it has to be made. So we took some time and we prepared all our drawings, and I came back to Bangalore, and by the time I came, the excavation had started, and there was a huge site office, and, where we had a, you know, of course, Swami's office bearers also had an office there, so it was all one huge complex. And we would spend a lot of time there discussing how to make things because of the complication and the intricacies involved to find the easiest way without compromising on the look of it. So after that, of course, I had the privilege to bring back all the drawings that I had with me to Prasanthi Nilayam, and it was like Swami was waiting and he would call me as soon as I reached, and in the interview room he would go through every detail that I was going to issue to the site for execution, and he would give his consent. And so thereafter it became a regular feature that I would come to Vrindavan, stay there and for about 10 days or so and discuss things at site, because as you know, you need to augment drawings as the construction keeps going and you discover the processes of construction that are involved. And so every time there were new drawings and we were adding on more details. So I remember one such time when Swami was in Vrindavan, and I had come okay, let me just take you back. When we received the drawings, there was a mandir which was on the side. But to me, when I saw that, I somehow felt that this should become the center of the hospital. Things should move around it.
Yes.
You know, because everything that is associated with Swami is a mandir.
Yes, it's a temple.
What is the purpose is different, but it is a mandir. Whether it is education, whether it is health, it all centers around our link with him.
You always first enter into the space as if it is a temple.
Yes. So we had modified those plans. So instead of a little area in the corner, we had made a kind of a relatively bigger area in the center. And since that was the hub of the hospital, we thought it needed to be very elaborate. So I had come to him with details of that area, and especially a very beautifully done flooring, which had multiple colored stones and laid in a very intricate pattern. So as I put forward the drawing, and that was a colored drawing I had brought, which showed the various stones that had to go. The colors and the finishes of the stones were all on that drawing. So he saw the drawing, and he was very appreciative. And then he put a finger on one of the stone colors that I had put. He said, "Don't use this." So I probably had a quizzical look on my face because, I thought it blended very well. So he says, "In South India, we use the stone in toilets."
Oh my God.
So don't use this stone. And of course, then we changed it. It was replaced with another stone. And I remember when we reached the stage of starting laying that stone, I was in Whitefield, and we sat overnight, the stone layer and me, and we had a full-size sample done for him. And we sat there all night and we got it done. And next morning when he came, he was so happy to see it.
Wow.
He was so happy to see the outcome of it. And he blessed that sample. And that is what we see now, which has been made.
Amazing.
In the puja area.
Wow.
And of course, there were little modifications in the initial concept. The altar of the mandir had a waterfall, which for reasons of hygiene and maintenance was later removed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it took another shape as it grew. And again, if we are familiar with that area, there is one photograph in the altar of that mandir.
Yes.
So that photograph, I was taken to a place where there were a lot of photographs of Swami, and I picked up one. And then I went to a printer. On Flex, we got several of those printed, full size, in different colored robes.
Oh.
Okay. And there was a red, there was white, there was peach, there was yellow, a whole lot of them. And next morning with those, I went to him. He came out of tray, and I was standing in the garden in front. So we opened out all of them, and he chose the one that is now in the altar.
Wow.
And so there were all along, there were instructions on how things need to be executed, how the things could be easier to make, and also what not to do. What not to do. It came in very subtle ways. Like I told you, change the stone and, all that. And every time then I had this bonus, I made it a point that a few days in Whitefield and maybe a day in Puttaparthi, and apprise him of what was going on. Usually I would carry photographs and drawings of the site to show him the development and the pace at which it was working. And to be very honest, even I was kind of taken aback. Every visit, I would come to Whitefield and, it didn't cease to shock me in the sense that at the rate the construction was going on, I've never seen anything like this happen. We worked on big projects, but the speed of construction, it was unimaginable. I mean, it was literally like day to day, you could see it, visually see it growing. And an enormous project, and with a limited time frame of 1 year. And on many occasions, month after month, I would take things to Swami and get his feedback and convey it to the site and to the engineers. And I remember one such instance when I was in Whitefield, and I spent a few days just sorting a few things out for the site. And thereafter, I was not the only architect. Let's put this in order. There was another architect from Bangalore. His name is Ravi. Ravi had done the basic medical planning. And Ravi could do it well from Bangalore because he was local. The entire setup was in Bangalore. The medical planners, the advisors, the doctors, the trust members, they were all here. So there was a lot of to and fro of drawings between Ravi and me. So every time we modified the plans and the elevation, we would send it back to him. He'd incorporate and issue them to the site. And that is how the whole process went. So one such visit, I came to the site, saw the place, and Ravi and I decided that we should go to Swami and brief him on, our usual developments happening at the site. So we went there. Swami came, and the first time and the only time I had come without any documentation. So Swami came, and we were sitting in front, and he said, "Photographs laya?"
Did you bring the photographs?
And my heart sank. I had nothing. And I just told him, "No, Swami, I don't have any photographs." Acha. And he picked up people and he went in for the interview. But I was so uncomfortable with the thought that he was waiting to see something and we did not bring it. So I requested Ravi to stay back and hold fort, as they would say. And I rushed back to Bangalore, and a photographer was arranged for me. And we took a whole lot of photographs from all around the hospital and the site. And by the evening, the photographer worked overtime. Late evening, I reached Bharti. Next morning, by that time, Ravi had already returned. So next morning, as I sat for darshan in the veranda, everybody around me, "Where were you? Where were you?" I said, "I had gone to Bangalore." I said, "Why, what is the matter?" "Swami was asking about you. He was angry that you were not here." So I was literally shivering with the thought that, maybe there's something I had done wrong. So he came, and from a distance he says, "Buddhi ledu." So my heart sank. "Where were you?" I said, "Swami, I went to Bangalore to get some photographs." He says, "Why?" I said, "Swami, you asked me for the photographs. I didn't have them." And I felt very uncomfortable about this. मैं तो ऐसे ही पूछा.
I asked just like that.
I just asked you like that, not knowing the impact of those words. And then he says, "Oh." So with these photographs, I followed Swami into the interview room, and he looked through every photograph that I had brought with his comments, with his praise, with his appreciation.
Wow.
And, little things like that at every event, it marks a memory for you, which probably lasts forever. You tend to forget other things, especially when Swami is angry. Those things you never forget. You never forget. Because, probably that is his love being showered on you.
But that effort that you did, to go back and bring, it really paid off with the moments that you got from Bhagawan.
It did.
Moments of divine proximity.
It did pay off. It did pay off. It resulted in
and actually
so much.
that anger also was, it was just too much love in that cover of anger. That's all.
Yes. He has to say something, right? He has to say something. So whether it's only the tone. If he had said with love buddhi ledu, would have hardly mattered. But I remember it today because the way he said buddhi ledu, and from such a distance. So I've seen his anger many times, and like how. But I think those are the memories that I cherish today, because they made me what he wants me to be. That effort is not because he spoke to me sweetly, but because he was angry. Because he was angry, and those words really ring in your head every time. When you're trying, when in your effort to be with him, you might slightly go wrong. And those words pull you back.
I think that fear of losing God's love, I think, is the greatest fear.
Yes.
And I think through that anger, it really comes hard on us that if I do this, I will lose his love. And I think that is the one thing that we don't want to lose and we cannot live without. And I think that is what propels us to walk on that path. And
I want to share something a little irrelevant, but which means a lot to me. And that is tomorrow is New Year, and we step into 2022. And it also marks and completes my 50 years of having set eyes on Swami the first time.
Beautiful.
Okay, my first step into this relationship, where this is a relationship where unashamedly, unabashedly, you can tell him that you love him without any fear of rejection. Every other relationship in the world that you have, there is that fear of rejection. But here, acceptance is guaranteed. You tell him once, I love you, and there are a million I love yous that come back in various ways. So this talk probably is very special to me because it marks my 50 years of holding his hand and moving towards him. And, and this episode of the hospital was one of the most beautiful, beautiful parts of these 50 years. And then to cap it all, as they say, the feather in the cap, this was the day of the inauguration. We were the family, my office colleagues, we were all here. And we went and sat amongst the audience, and the stage, the stage was made in the mandir. How grand it looked. Swami's words resonated that day, grand. Grand. And there was a long table for all the dignitaries and Swami to sit, and by the side there was a podium. And as we were waiting, somebody from the office came to me and he said, Rajan, why don't you come to the back? So I went, and when I went to the back, I saw that Ravi was already seated there. So I went and sat next to them. And the program began, and the Prime Minister, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, had come, and there was the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, there was the Chief Minister of Karnataka, the Governor of Karnataka, the whole lot of dignitaries sitting there. And Swami gave his discourse. And during the discourse, it was unexpected that happened. He said that I want everyone to meet the 3 people who were responsible for this hospital. So the first name called out was Ravi. So he walked up to Swami, and Swami gave him a beautiful silver bowl.
Yes.
And he came back, and then it was announced. My name was announced. I went, and he gave me a bowl, and I came back. And the third one was the trust member, who was given a memento. And Swami thereafter finished his discourse. And after having finished his discourse, he put his hand on the mic, and Anil Kumar was standing next to him. And he said something to Anil Kumar. And then Anil Kumar announced that out of the 3 people who've been honored today, 2 are the students of Swami's institute. One was, of course, the trust member, and the second was Rajan Sood. And when that was said, my jaw dropped. What an honor. What an honor.
Absolutely.
For such a small effort put in.
Wow.
You give an inch and he gives you a mile, maybe miles. And this was, I had been aware for a fairly long time, actually from my first time in the summer course, that Swami would introduce me to people around and say, he's my boy, he's my student. But in public, such a huge audience, for him to say that Rajan Sood was a student of my institute.
Wow.
It was an honor beyond expectation.